So let us have first a review or a primark or a benchmarking of the topics to be discussed for this week by having this game, which is 4 picks in 1 word. So I know you're all familiar with 4 picks in 1 word, diba? You need to guess the word by merely observing the 4 pictures. Okay? So for your answers, if you know the answer, kindly chat your answer in the chat box. Ano po? Okay. So let's have the first word. Okay, so based on the pictures, the first word is consist of 10 letters. So what is this word? Anyone? Oh, may nauna na. Ayan. So sabi ni Lance, yan, dami na rin sumagot. Ayan, nag-raise ng hand si Carl. But then again, pakichat po ha ng inyong mga sagot. Ayan, nakikita ko naman. Okay. So, yan. So your answers are correct. Okay. So as you can see with the pictures, okay, di ba, mga tao siya. And the word is population. But then again, in statistics, we do not only deal with population or yung mga tao or or people, diba? When we say population statistics, you can use characteristics or different objects. Okay po? Yan. So you got it right. The first word is population. Let's have the second word. Okay. So this second word is consist of 6 letters. And what is that? Sino nauna natin? Okay, so kanina si Lance, then this time we have Miko being the first. Okay, so you got it right again. So based on the 4 pictures, diba? From the total number, okay, we will just get part of it, and that is what we call as sample. Okay, very good. Let's have the next picture. Okay. So what is that word? 6-letter word. Nauna na ulit. At sinong nauna natin? Okay, so this time it was from STEM B. Yan, si Bea Angela. Okay, that's correct, Bea. It's random. Okay, so makikita nyo naman from the pieces of Scrabble, diba? Yan, random. So this is a method of random sampling also. Okay, that's correct. It's random. Let's have the next word. May nag-chat na agad. Uriel, bakit ka natawa? Okay, next word. Okay, what is that? 11-letter word. Bilis sino kaya nauna dyan? Market. 11 letters, anak, Bea. 11-letter word. Marketing. Look at the pictures. Anyone? Wala pa nakakakuha ng tamang sagot? Okay. Meron lang nakakuha ng tamang sagot. O, bakit may question mark yung sa'yo? Okay, so nakakuha po ng tamang sagot is Ella from STEM C. And you're also correct, Francine, kaya lang you're not sure, diba? Okay, so kung makikita ninyo lahat siya, diba? Itong lalaki, so what he was doing, online shopping, calling somebody, yan, diba? Magpapadeliver, mag-message, and whatsoever. Ito, ganyan din, diba? Ito sa mga convenience store siya. So just like 7-Eleven, diba? Mini stop, yan. So the word is convenience. Okay? So last word. Let's have the last word before proceeding with the first topic. Okay, so what is this kaya? 7-letter word. Okay, so look at this one. Look at the pictures. Meron na nag-chat. Okay, si Ate Eunice ang nauna. Cluster, grouping. Yan. So the correct word is cluster. Yan. Diba naka-cluster sila? Ito naka-cluster according to the street. Siguro kung saan sila nakatira. This one pare-parehas mushroom siguro to. Diba? Yan. Okay, so what these words, what are the connections of these words with our topic for this morning? Since the first topic, the first module is about identifying the different random sampling techniques, then we'll be able to use some words and even review of other words that we had with the 4 picks and 4 picks in one. Diba? Yan. So these are the objectives for the first module for this week. So we need to define what the random sampling is. We need to illustrate and differentiate the different random sampling techniques. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, this topic was already discussed in your practical research. Tama ba ako? Tama ako, Lance? Na-discuss na yan sa inyong Miko?
Na-discuss na po.
Hindi pa po.
Hindi pa? Talaga ba?
Ay, wait lang. Depende po.
Different random sampling techniques, hindi pa na-discuss?
Na-discuss na po nung grade 10 po.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Buti si Joyce. Natandaan na. Yan, siguro nga yung second SEMA di-discuss sa PR. Okay. So it's very important that you know the different sampling techniques kasi this will help you in choosing your respondents. Okay? So first, of course, we need to define population and sample. So when we say population, it includes all elements from a set of data or sinasabi natin the totality of something. Diba? Yung let's say, for example, the total population of senior high school or total number of students of senior high school students of Quezon National High School. So if you will deal with all the students of senior high school, then that will be considered as the population. Okay? Or pwede rin po na total number of students of Quezon National High School. That's the population. Kabuuhan, kumbaga. And from that population, if you want to get something, so from the senior high school population, if you want to be your respondents lamang ay yung mga STEM students, both in grade 11 and grade 12, then you will have the sample. And as we define sample, it is consists of one or more data from the population. So as you can see with the pictures that we had with 4 picks in one, diba? From the population, you will just get part of it to be the representative of your population. So it's very important that you will just deal, pero it's a case-to-case basis, of course, because if the population is just too small, then you have to deal with all of them. But if not, then you need to get samples. Okay, and from here, in choosing your samples, it's better to use the random sampling. Actually, there are 2 types, the random and of course, the non-random sampling. Okay, so as we define random sampling, this is a sampling method of choosing representatives from the population wherein every sample has an equal chance of being selected. Especially you guys, diba? Kapag may mga activities or may mga games, ang gusto nyo lagi dun tayo sa fair play, kumbaga. Okay? And this one, we can consider this random sampling as a fair play in choosing your sample. Kasi you will all have equal chances of being included in the sample. Okay? So, kaya magandang gamitin yan. But then again, it depends on your study. Okay. Okay. So, for our learning task 2, okay, so dito kailangan gamitin. And please, just to clarify lang po, every week, you have a minimum of 4 tasks to do or to save in your Google Drive. So, probably, I'm just finishing your grade and after this, I'll be checking na kaagad kasi, yun nga, with last semester, yung mga natatambakan, so medyo nadadamihan sila pag hindi ka agad na-notify. So I'll be notifying you probably by next week. Tapusin ko lang lahat ang grades and ang card para sa bigayan. So with our learning task number 2, you need to match column A with its definition in column B. So these are just some words that you will encounter with the different kinds of random sampling. Okay, so for word number 1, it's simple. So what do you think is the definition if you have the word simple? Anyone? Wala nataas ang kamay. Kailangan ko mag-ano? Harold, anak. Yan, what do you think is the definition of simple?
I'm not
Simple.
sure po. So
Okay.
letter B po, having few parts or not complex.
Yan, syempre, di ba, when we say simple, it's not complex. So, konti lang. Parang pag nagdadamit lang kayo or what, di ba? Yan. Thank you, Harold. You're correct. So, when we say simple random sampling technique, it's a kind of technique with few parts and of course, not complex. Ibig sabihin, simple lang yung kanya mga steps na sinusunod. Okay? So, how about when we say systematic? Let's say Uriel.
Mama ko po ba?
Opo, anak.
Systematic A po, methodical procedure.
And even in your science, okay, anything that you do in or following a certain procedure is a systematic way. Yeah. So thank you, Uriel. So that's their A. Okay. How about when we say stratified? Let's say, wait lang po. Okay. Joyce.
Ma'am, C po, to divide or arrange into classes.
To divide or arrange into classes. Yan. I'm happy that you're able to attend na. Ayan. So tingnan natin. Ayan. Don't worry. Kasama yan. Part yan, Uriel. Having unstable internet connection. Ayan. So, Ate Joyce, when we say stratified, strata. Ano po? Strata. Okay, so when we say strata, they are classified according to their similarities. Yan. Pero if you will just arrange them into classes, then we have the cluster. Okay, so these are just some of the basic definitions of the different words that you would encounter as we go along with the discussion of random sampling. Yeah. So let us try to illustrate simple random sampling, systematic and stratified and cluster random sampling. So look at this example. A researcher writes the name of which is draws 7 pieces of paper. So di ba dun sa isang picture natin kanina sa random sampling, makikita nyo meron siyang bowl na puti, yung glass bowl, and then may mga papers sa loob. So if you will do this one, yan, wherein you will draw 7 pieces of paper. So this is what? So this is an example of a simple random sampling, diba? So not complicated. So you from the bowl where there are papers, you'll just get or pick 7 pieces of paper from that. So simple random sampling, sabi nga natin kanina sa definition, you'll just follow simple steps, not complex. Okay? So same with this one. A researcher selects every 7th student from a random list. Yan. So random sampling pa rin siya, but then nagkaroon siya ng system na every 7th student. Kasi ito, kukuha ka lang, di ba? Pero ito, hindi lahat ng nakukuha mo makukonsider. But then, ay kukonsider lang natin yung ikapito ng ikapito. So, ibig sabihin ay bubunot ka, okay, 7, yung pang 7, yun lang yung gagamitin mo. But then with number 1, ang difference niya is that all the 7 papers na na-draw mo will be part of your sample. Ito, ika-7, then kukuha ka ulit ng another 7 papers, yung pang 7 or yung sabihin natin na pang 14 na pick mo will be part of your sample, then it's a systematic random sampling, following certain procedures. Ano po? Let's have another one. So our researcher tells the class to count and then selects those students who count a multiple of 7 numbers. So similar with number 2 natin, okay? But then yung procedure lang na ginamit niya is that considering or using all the class, diba, they will just count and then select those students who count a multiple of 7, 14, and whatsoever. Okay, systematic sampling. The next one, a researcher separates the list of boys and girls, then draws 7 names by gender. Okay, so hinati sila, okay, sineperate, diba, according to similarities ng gender. Okay, and then nagdo-draw sila ng names, 7 names from boys and 7 names from girls. So that is considered as stratified random sampling. Okay. Then the last one, a researcher surveys all students from 3 randomly selected classes out of 7 classes. So since they are grouped according to classes, so this is under cluster random sampling. So ang stratified po natin ang difference. Maybe you will ask me, ma'am, what's the specific difference between stratified random sampling and cluster random sampling? Because when we say cluster, it's according to classes. Ano po? Classes may be different in terms of their characteristics, okay? But as long as they are in one class, then that is cluster random sampling. But then sa stratified random sampling, they are grouped according to their similarities, okay? Characteristics. Any question with that? Okay, so as we define simple random sampling, it is a technique which is the most basic random sampling wherein each element in the population has an equal probability of being selected. So katulad nga ng fishbowl technique na ginagawa natin, ayan po. Okay. Then we have the systematic random sampling. It is a random sampling that uses a list of all the elements in the population, and then elements are being selected based on the kth consistent intervals, meaning it's up to you kung ano yung magiging system ninyo. If you want the 5th consistent interval or every 5 elements or every 5 persons na makukuha ninyo, 5 person, di ba? So that will be part of the, as long as you will have a system or a procedure, methodological procedure, then it will be under the systematic random sampling. Then we have the definition of terms for stratified random sampling. So again, when we say stratified random sampling, we will divide the population into different strata or divisions based on their characteristics. Okay? And cluster random, we will divide the population into clusters or classes, okay, randomly selected. Okay? And then we have the convenience sampling. So convenience sampling is actually a non-random sampling, right? From the word itself, convenience. So in whatever procedure the researcher will find himself convenient, then he will use this convenience sampling. So it's a non-random sampling wherein the researcher gathers data from nearby sources of information, exerting minimal effort. Okay? So let's say, for example, finding the number of households with Converge or using Converge as their network provider or internet provider. So what will you do in order for you to get your sample? So one way is that, of course, you can use your telephone. Yan, tatawag lang kayo, di ba? Meron naman siyang phone book, meron siyang directory, then dial lang kayo ng dial, and then yun na yung magiging way of interviewing ninyo sa mga respondents ninyo, just to get lang po kung ilan sa kanila yung gumagamit ng Converge. Okay? So again, kung saan magiging convenient yung researcher and kung saan niya makukuha yung target number ng samples niya, yun po yung tinatawag natin na convenience sampling. Another method of using non-random sampling is the purposive sampling. So it is a non-random sampling since the respondents are being selected based on the goal of the studies of the researcher. So halimbawa, ang purpose niyo naman is to find how many senior high school students love or ano ba pwede maging ano natin doon. Okay, you want to find out whether or you have this target of having 100 senior high school students in Lucena who loves to watch basketball, or they are fond of watching PBA or whatever type of basketball. So para makuha ninyo yung purpose ninyo, pwede kayong pumunta halimbawa sa Quezon Convention Center natin kung may mga palaro doon ng basketball, di ba may mga nagwa-watch doon. So yun na yung pwede ninyong i-interview. Ano po, para makuha ninyo yung purpose ninyo. Kaya siya tinawag na purposive sampling. Yeah. So those are actually the 2 types of non-random for our discussion. But then again, in some books, you will encounter other types of non-random sampling techniques. Again, in any research, it's better to use the random sampling, but it's again case-to-case basis. Ano po? Okay. Second module for this week is computing for the parameter and statistics. So ano ba yung pinagkaiba ng parameter and statistics? So these are the objectives. Okay, dadalawa lang pala siya. We need to define what a sample statistic and a population parameter is. And then of course, we need to calculate parameter or statistic of the given data. Okay? So as you can see with the objectives, alam nyo na ngayon. When we say statistic, so this can be plural or singular. Ano po? Statistic is comes always from the sample, while parameter is from the population. Okay? But then the subject itself is always with an S. Okay? Hindi natin pwedeng sabihin na statistic and probability. Okay? Sa English yun yung sinasabi natin na mga plural in form but singular in meaning. But this one na sinasabi natin parameter and statistic, the statistic here is considered as coming from the sample. Any data coming from the sample is statistics. So if you have more data coming from the samples, then you'll have statistics. Yan. So sinabi ko na nga po yung definition niya. When we say parameter, it comes from the one are called parameters. So these are the symbols used for parameters. So ano tong symbol na to? The Greek letter mu or the population mean. So this is the symbol for population mean. This one is the population standard deviation. And kapag naka-squared na siya, this is already the variance, the population variance. Okay? So kapag nakita niyo po yung mga symbols na yan, ibig sabihin that the numeric data came from the population. Okay? But when we say statistic or statistics, these are measures that is or are the X bar. Yan. Yung usual na nakikita ninyong symbol for mean, S or SD, for standard deviation, and S squared is the variance. Okay, so take note of the different symbols. Okay, so let's have this parameter. So these are the different formulas for the population mean. We have the summation of X over N. Okay, the population variance, summation of the quantity X minus mu squared over N. And the population standard deviation is that, of course, if you have already the value of your variance, just find the square root of that, and that will be your standard deviation. Okay po? So these are the different formulas for your parameter. Yan. Just the symbol, ano po, yung symbol lang yung mababago natin. So kanina yung mu symbol natin for the mean, this time it's the X bar, and we do not use anymore the capital X, we use the X, but then it's the same, ano po, numbers din po lahat yan, yes, and the sample standard deviation. Knowing all this formula, we'll now be able to compute parameter and statistic. Okay? Okay, so let's have this one. So from the table, you will see that there are 10 students. And we'll consider this already as the population. Ano po? So the population of students is 10, capital N. We use the capital N for the population. Okay? Total number of total number of respondents from the population. Then we have their grades. Okay? Then we try to get column ni X. Kaya we have the summation of X. Total of that is 840. Then we need to set up the column for X minus mu. So ibig sabihin, before finding this column, we need to find our population mean. And what's our formula for the population mean? Yeah. So pinakita yung sample sa. Ay, wait lang. Yeah. Yan. So gawin natin dito. Ano po? So when we say before, okay, wait lang po kasi this is already pala coming from the sample. Let's go back to the last slide. Yan. Okay. So before you set up this table, you need to get first your population mean. Okay? I do not have symbol for muha, so I'll be using words. So population mean will be equal to, sabi nga natin, summation of X, and what is that? It's 840 over N. Your N is 10. So that is equal to 84. Okay? So ito lang po yung dinivide again, the summation of X, 840, and your N, capital N, which is 10. So the population mean or the value of your mu is 84. That's why we have this column na. Ano po? Yan. Kaya meron tayo ditong 84 because that's the value of the population mean. So one by one, we will subtract each grade to the population mean. So 94 minus 84, 85 minus 84, and so on and so forth up to the last student. And then we will get the square of that. So 10 squared is 100. So we have this column. Ano po? Okay? So then we tried to get the summation of this column. Inad na natin siya lahat. And the total of that is 382. So saan po natin siya gagamitin? Okay? So we will get that by computing the population variance. Ano po? population variance is equal to, sabi nga natin kanina, sa formula natin, it's the summation of x minus mu squared. So it's 382 divided by, yan, balikan lang natin yung formula natin kanina. Yan. So dyan po nang galing lahat yun ha. Yan. So ito yung formula natin oh. Kaya kinuha natin yung column for the x minus mu squared. Ano po? Yan. So going back this one. Forward na siya. So computing for the population variance. So let's continue with this one. It's 382 divided by our n, which is 10. So that is approximately equal to 38.2. So the variance is 38.2 based on this. Okay? And then lastly, trying to solve for the population SD or the population S, then that will be equal to the square root. So I don't have a symbol for square root. Square root of 38.2. Anyone who has a calculator beside you?
6.18 po, ma'am.
Okay.
Approximately
So that is approximately equal to 6.8. So that's how we compute for the population. I think this is under. Basta, kinompute na natin siya. Okay? So any question with this? Computing the parameter? Dali lang naman ano, as long as you know the formula. Okay? So if none, let's proceed with the next one. From this population, let's say for example, you just need 7 students. Okay? So yung 7 students mo, yun po yung maging sample natin. So from this table, we'll just get 7 students. Ayan. So 7 lang yung kukunin natin, di ba? Ito yung kanina natin. From the 10, yung small letter n natin will be your sample, 7 lang. So randomly selected, nakuha natin si student 1, si student 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Then we get the summation of that, nakuha natin is 602. Then right after computing the summation of x, then we'll be able to find the sample mean, okay, which is equal to 602 divided by 7 na po siya ngayon. Okay po. So magiging na siyang 7 because you are using already the sample. So we'll not use n na 10, but instead it will be 7. Okay po yun? Yan. And that is equal to 86. Yan. So the mean is 86. And after having your mean, the next column to set up is your x minus mean. So yung napili ninyong samples, yung isa-isa nun, yun yung isusubtract natin kay 86. So 94 minus 86, then squared natin for the last column. Then sa 88 naman, minus 86 is 2. Yan. And then setting up that column for your variance, so for your sample variance, then that will be equal to 236 divided by your n na naman, which is 7. And that is approximately equal to what?
33.71 po.
33.71. Tama po. Ay, wait lang po. Let me correct my my formula. Okay? Because we're dealing na with samples kasi. And in dealing with samples, yung formula natin is not n only in the denominator, but it should be n minus 1. Ano po? Pag samples na, it will be n minus 1. Okay, sorry for that. So it will be 6 na. 7 minus 1, kaya 6. Again, Miko, that is approximately equal to
39.33 po.
39.33. Okay, so again correct ko lang yung kaninang slide ko. It should be n minus 1 for the sample variance. And sample standard deviation, of course, n minus 1 din po siya. Okay? So, lastly, for the sample SD, then we will have square root of 39.33. And that is approximately equal to
6.27.
6.27. So remember our interpretation of SD, di ba? The bigger the SD, okay, anong interpretation natin? Pag big ang SD, ibig sabihin, not good yung performance, di ba? meaning the scores are spread out. Malalayo siya from the mean. Okay? But if you will have smaller SD, then the better the performance, kumbaga. Okay? So any question with this, mga anak, on how to compute for the sample, statistic, and the parameter, the population parameter? May
None.
question? None naman. Thank you, Uriel. Okay. So I'll clear ulit. And for your first learning task, okay, so that is your first learning task for this week. So you need to compute based on the data given. Okay, so you have your guide already. Okay po. And then next one, for the B, you'll just get 5, okay, from the population, and you need to compute again the sample mean, the sample variance, and the sample SD. Okay po. And then for the last module for week 5, identifying sampling distribution of statistics. So these are the objectives. Okay, so from your data, we'll just construct a histogram. You know what a histogram naman, di ba? And the distribution, of course. When we say sampling distribution, it's actually the table. Okay? It means a frequency distribution using the computed sample mean from all the possible random samples of particular sample size taken from the given population. So we usually use this formula of combination. Yeah. So para makuha natin kung ilan yung gagamitin natin for the sampling distribution, then we need to use this formula of combination. Yung total N taken yung sample size. Okay? So given the population of this one, you just need 3 samples, then you will have 5 taken 3. Okay? So 5 taken 3, pinahaba lang po natin, but using your calculator, mayroong combination naman dyan na function. So 5 taken 5, then yung NCR 3, then meaning dapat magkaroon kayo ng 10 sa inyong frequency distribution table. Okay? So let's say for example, we have these samples. Yeah. Ito na yung nakuha natin. Taken 3 daw eh. Diba? So, diba, from the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you will just take 3 numbers from the 5 numbers. So, ano-ano yung pwede natin makuha? Ito lahat yon. Kaya nga siya, yung na-compute natin, 10 daw dapat yon. Counting all the samples, we have 10 samples. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay? Then, each of the sample, you need to compute the mean. So, add lang natin siya, 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6 divided by 3. That's why the mean is 2. Yung next naman natin, 4 plus 2 plus 1 is 7 divided by 3. That's why we have 2.33. So all of these samples, kailangan natin siyang i-compute ang mean at nandito po siya sa next column natin. Okay? So magtataka kayo bakit saan po nakuha yung mean. Bawat sample, kailangan i-compute yung mean. So 3, like this last one. So 3 plus 4 is 7 plus 5 is 12. 12 divided by 3, kaya naging 4 po yung kanyang mean. Okay? So let's have an example on how to construct a frequency and probability distribution table of the sample means. Okay? So, kinontinue ko lang po yung kanina ha. Di ba from the numbers 1 to 5, kinuha natin ay tatluhan lang. We'll try to consider, ito yung nakuha natin. Okay? Ito yung nakuha natin na samples. So yan na po yung gagamitin ko for this table. Okay? Yung sample means nila, kung makikita nyo, ito na lang. Why? Kasi meron siya na nagkatulad-tulad. Ayan. Look at the 7, dalawa din. Okay? Alin pa may katulad? Okay, wala na. So, ibig sabihin, bawas tayo ng isa for 2.67, bawas tayo ng another isa for 3.33. So, mula dun sa, dalawa din ang 3. So, mula sa 10 na means niya, magiging na lang siyang 7. At ano yung 7 means na yon? Yan, ito na po yon. 2, 4, 6, 7. So, ilan yung may sample mean na 2? Isa lang. Ilan yung sample mean na 2.33? Isa lang. Dalawa yung may sample mean na 2.67. Dalawa yung may sample mean na 3. Dalawa din yung 3.33. Isa ang 3.67 and 1 ang 4. Okay? So, be sure that the sample means are arranged from lowest or in ascending order. Nag-start tayo sa lowest mean, then papunta siya sa highest. And then we will try to get the probability of each. Okay? So, di ba, from the 10 samples na kinuha natin, isa doon ang may sample mean na 1. That's why its probability is 1 over 10 or in decimal equivalent, it's 0.10. Okay? So, same with 2.33, same with 2.67, na 2 divided by 10, it's 1 over 5 or 0.2 or 0.20. Okay? And then going back again with the definition of probability, we will add this, a total of 1. Exact po siya. Okay? So that's the probability of each random variable. And then from that, we will make a histogram. Remember that a histogram is just like a bar graph, okay? And everything that is independent is in the x-axis, while the data or information which is dependent must be placed on the y-axis. So basically, ang nasa x-axis natin is yung probability ng x natin, ng samples natin. And then, no, rather than, sorry for that, it's actually the sample means. Ano po? Yung sample means ang nasa x-axis and the probability is on the y-axis. So makikita nyo naman that there are only two probabilities, the 1/10 and the 2/10, or you can use 1/5 instead of having 2/10. So ginraph na po natin yung 2, yung mean na 2, ang probability niya is 1/10. Yan. So this is already the histogram of the sampling distribution. Okay? So I hope wala kayong question for that. And your second learning task for this week, yeah. Medyo magmamadali na tayo. Yeah. So this one, unlike yung learning task 4 ninyo sa week 4 ha, ito po kailangan nyo na talagang sagutan. Okay? And you need to show all your solutions. Always remember that. So dito sa first table ninyo, magsiset up kayo what are those samples. Ito po yun, 19, 20, 15, 17, 27, and 22. And from population ninyo. So ano-ano yun? So use the formula ng combination natin, then you need to list down all the samples here. Diba? Na merong apatan. Halimbawa, 19, 20, 15, 17, 19, 20, 15, 27, and so on. And so compute for the mean of each sample. And then, okay, set up the sampling distribution or the frequency table natin. Find the probability of each mean. And then draw the histogram. Okay po tayo doon? Okay, meron pa ba? Okay. So that's the end of week 5 topics. Let's proceed with week 6. We only have 7. May klase kayo ng 10. Ano po? Mga anak, may klase ba kayo? Ay, ng 11? Wala.
Wala po, ma'am.
Ayan. So we'll try to extend some minutes. Ano po? Okay, we'll have our topics for week 6. So these are the topics for week 6, finding the mean and variance of the sampling distribution of the sample mean. So from the sampling distribution na pinut up natin kanina, we will try to compute for the mean and variance of that. Okay, so that's why our objective is, of course, find the mean and variance based on the sampling distribution. Yan. So ito yung formula natin during the first week ba? Weeks. So hindi ko na po ito di-discuss yung learning task 2. Pero ipapakita ko lang ulit yung ating formula for the expected mean. Diba? Okay, so that is the formula for the variance. Ito yung pinut up na natin yung ating sampling distribution. Okay, so we have the formula for the expected mean. And that is equal to summation of x times the probability. Okay, summation of that. So from the table, ito po yung nakuha natin. So ang total niya is, yun na po yun. So nakuha natin that the expected mean is 3. Then set up the next column, i-minus natin yung each mean for the computation of the population variance. So yan yung na-compute natin. Okay? So these are the steps that you need to follow in the computation of your mean. Okay? So we have there the formula and the variance, of course. Okay? And then the last one. Okay? So pakita na natin kung paano. Remember this formula? So we have two formula for the variance. For the finite population, we have this formula. Then let's try to define some words related to this topic. Yeah. So because it's very important that you know how to analyze the given situation, if the standard is given, standard deviation is given, or the population standard deviation is given. So based from the first situation, because of inclusive education, learners with disabilities are also part of the normal students. Consider a population of PWD learners consisting of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Samples of size 2 are drawn from the population. So based on the direction, you need to determine whether the population variance is known or unknown. And if it is known, then you need to use which formula. Siyempre, pagka population variance ang given, or population standard deviation ang given dun sa situation nyo, you will use this one. This symbol. Diba? Pag population. Pag sample yung given, yan. Ito naman yung standard error formula na gagamitin natin. Okay? So based on number 1, okay, is it known or unknown? Yan. It is known. Okay? Okay? Bakit? Kasi so from the population, diba? Yan. So binigay that everything comes from the population. Magdodraw lang daw kayo ng sample size 2. But then, hindi naman siya binigay. yung coming from the sample. So that's why the formula of error is this one. Okay. The next, look at this one. We have the mood, the population mean. What is this symbol? This symbol comes from the sample.
Standard.
Yan, diba? Then yung small letter n natin coming from the sample. So ibig sabihin, the population variance is unknown. That's why the symbol to be used is the S submean or the standard deviation, the sample standard deviation. Okay. Next situation. So you wish to determine the, okay, so the symbol, again, population, IQ. So it's very obvious that coming from the population, and this one also, the population standard deviation, ibig sabihin, the population. Okay. Pinibilisan ko na ng kauntian, ha? Okay. Next. Okay, so based from this year, a sample data. Sample data, but then the population mean is given. Is it known or unknown? Yeah, it's unknown. Okay? Because the data from the sample, not given siya. Okay? All data given are coming from the samples. That's why the population variance is unknown, and then the formula is this one. Okay? Lastly, coming from the population, pa rin yung values natin. So the symbol is this one. Okay? By just identifying the population variance from the situation, you will know what formula to use. Ano po? Yeah. So let's have the distribution of the sample mean for normal population. Yeah. So if you can still remember the conversion of the normal probability distribution to standard, we have the formula Z equals mu minus X over the standard deviation. Ano po? Ito, sa population variance natin, we will use the Z distribution, pero yung formula niya will be this one. So if your n is greater than or equal to 30, then you will use the population variance or the Z distribution with the formula of mean, sample mean minus the population mean divided by the population standard deviation over the square root of n. Okay? And then, if the population variance is unknown, then you will use the formula. The standard error becomes this one. Yung difference niya, pag population variance is known, then you need to compute for the population standard deviation by having variance rather than the standard deviation, because you will use the population variance. You need to use this formula, standard population standard deviation divided by the square root of n, and then your Z distribution will be this one. But if your n is less than 30, and you have for the standard error of the mean will be this one. And then you will use the T distribution naman. Okay? So again, ang distinction po natin, ha, if the population variance is known, then you need to use the standard error of the mean, formula of population standard deviation of the mean equals the standard deviation divided by the square root of n. And use the Z distribution, yung formula natin. And that is considered only if you have your sample size of 30 or more. But if your sample size is less than 30, then you need to use the standard error of the mean of with the formula of this one. The standard deviation coming from the sample divided by the square root of your n and the T distribution. Okay po? Let's try this one. Yeah, learning task 3 pala yan. Okay, from your learning task 3, you need to identify all the unknown, ha? So you need to supply all this data given from the situation. Okay? So from this situation, what is the value of your n? What is your small n? Remember that capital N is the population and your n is the sample. Ano po? And then you need to show your answer here and what standard error formula did you use. Ano po? Maliwanag po tayo doon para sa ating learning task 3, pangatlo for this week. And then, hindi pa ako nakakapag-send ng link ng inyong summative test 1. Sasabay ko na siya sa inyong worksheet 1. Ano po, sendan ko na lang ulit sa inyong mga GC. Yeah. Okay. And then this one is the learning task 4. Okay, you'll just identify the different formula. Okay. So hanggang dyan po natatapos ang ating discussion for this week. Anyone who wants to share your insights of the different topics?